Thank you guys for coming. Pester is a pretty cool tool. You will be using Pester hopefully by the end of this presentation. Raise a hand. Who's used Pester? Who's wrote Pester code? 2, 3. Okay. All right. Who has written code and just handed it over without testing it? Oh, those that are not raising their hands have perfect code. Cool. Okay. Awesome. That's true. All right. Cool. Yeah, they're out there. Okay. Cool. All right. So we'll get into why to use Pester. Examples that I've done that I've used with Pester. And go from there. So here's me. I've been using PowerShell for like 2 years, so I'm kind of a noob. I was actually published in a book about Steve Jobs dying, so that's pretty awesome. I used to work at the Apple Store, and the day that he died, I sent out a tweet about something about him, and the tweet ended up getting I think 33,000 likes on it and about 6,000 retweets. So that's my claim to fame. I've been at one point a tweet by that tweet was liked more than Justin Bieber's tweets at certain points. So it's pretty awesome. So yeah, it's pretty awesome. Can we see it? I'll show it afterwards.
Funny how you had that ready to go, right?
As a matter of fact,
you got to make this whole thing. I'll show you. So that's pretty awesome. If I'm in Twitter, my GitHub, I'll have the slides and the code as well as our RTP sug. We'll have it too. So. So I have imposter syndrome. I've only been doing this for 2 years. There might be other people who have that. I don't claim to know the ins and outs of Pester. I was messaging people who are much more experienced than I am, and they've been helping me out with it, and I'm just kind of rolling with it. So encouragement to those guys here or online, hey, if you want to present, please present. We don't need someone who's an expert. Just dive in. I've worked on this for on and off for about a month. I have 2 kids under 3, so if I can do it, you can do it. So it was fun. So you are good at PowerShell. It's why you're here. It's why you're looking at it. So thank you for coming and listening. This was me to an extent. It was kind of at one point I was just writing code and writing modules and giving it to the help desk and just having them test it, or I might test it myself, or and sure, let's see what happens, right? I write some error, some try catches and see what happens, but I kept hearing about this thing called Pester, and I was like, okay, I should probably take a look at that. So, so what is Pester? So Pester essentially is it's a testing. All right, so it's loaded because. So I have an ops background. Pester is primarily for testing your code in PowerShell. It can be used for unit tests and integration tests. So I wrote it down here. So unit tests are essentially testing pieces of your code. If you write PowerShell code and you write PowerShell functions, they should just do one thing and one thing well. So Pester forces you to start thinking about that and get to that point. And so that's part of what Pester does, is forces you to design and style your code in a way that's testable. So yeah, forces you to rethink how you write PowerShell. It's a way to check that the thing you're doing in PowerShell is actually doing that. So it runs on Linux, Mac OS, Windows. It's actually pre-installed on Windows 10 in Server 2016. So they thought it was pretty important. Microsoft thought it was important to include it. So that's kind of a big deal. Did y'all know that, by the way? Did they actually included external modules?
I have a question about that. So is there a problem with updating the Pester module since it already comes pre-installed?
No, there's not, but I'll actually talk about the way that I go about updating Pester on my machine. There's 2 ways of doing it, and I'll show the benefits of ripping it off in Windows 10.
But, Jonathan, is there a pre-core and a post-core version of Pester, or was it all written with .NET Core in mind?
I don't know. I think it was. I think PowerShell or Pester 4 was the version where they released it to run on Windows and Linux and Mac OS. And we're at 4.7 right now, .4. So I think yeah, after 3 is when it started there. So, but it actually runs right now on PowerShell 2 through PowerShell 4. So Pester can run anywhere. So there's no excuse not to use it. So it's pretty wild. It's pretty, and there's a reason for that, and I'll explain why. And so then I actually posted a link here, or there's going to be a link here. So there's a white paper called the release model, I think. It's basically a big PDF that Microsoft released that talks about how to think for ops people, how to think like a developer when managing infrastructure and using Pester and testing and whatnot to read this, and you'll understand after you learn about Pester how to actually start implementing it. So, and then yeah, warning: this presentation may turn you more into a developer than you thought you were. So, sorry, but you write code, you're a developer. So, all right. So, I will now switch to my demos. I have like a bunch of code to show you, a bunch of code to go through. I might not go through them all if I don't have time, but I got about 30 minutes, so I'll do my best. So let's try it here. So okay. All right. So this is the. So if you want to, oh, I'm not sharing it. Stand by. That would help. Stand by just a second here. Share content. Boom. Bam. How's that?
Better.
Okay, perfect. So the question was, okay, how do you install Pester? Well, install module-pester, right? So you can do this. I've done this before, where I just rip out the version that's in there. This is actually a script that I took from.
Can you zoom in a little bit?
Yeah. This is actually a script that I took from a GIST by I think his name is Jakob. He's one of the main Pester maintainers. This is one way to install Pester, a brute force way to actually remove it, rather. And then this is the way to install it. So you can. I don't like having multiple versions of Pester on the same machine or multiple versions of a module. So this is how I do it. But yeah, if you're on Windows 10, if you browse to this right now, you can see that you have a folder called Pester with a certain version in it. So,
and that's the catch, because that one's signed by Microsoft.
Correct.
So if you go to do the install module before removing that one,
well, yes,
then it gives you a little complaint, because
there used to be a complaint, but they're now starting to sign Pester so that it works with this as well.
Okay.
So yeah, there used to be an issue where you install from Pester, you had to do the skip publisher check. But I think they fixed that in a recent version. So they started signing that. So I just want to dive in. So this is kind of how I learned. So let's get started. So let's do get shit operator. So with Pester, there's three things to understand. Well, there's 3 concepts in code. There's describe, context, and it. All right. So let's start out by running this one here. I'll show you everything. So this function was added recently. Get should operator. This will tell you. This will give you all the assertions that you can use. So this should be exactly, should be in, should be true, should be false, should have count. And I'll go through most of these on the left-hand side. But essentially, what Pester requires you to do is kind of structure your code in a certain way so that it can be testable. And I will show you some examples here in a second. So I want to go here. Okay. All right. So let's start with my function. Start with a function. Get airport. Get airport is simple. It takes two cities, Raleigh and Phoenix. What it does is it outputs a bunch of information: name, code, website, phone number, airlines, and it works. I used to work for RDU, so I can talk more about that. But so I have get airports. I'm going to be testing this function quite a bit and then I'll steer off of this and go on to other things as well. But get airport will be kind of the main function I'll use to start testing stuff. So if we go here, so if we just run this, and you'll get back data, right? So, all right, straightforward, okay. So the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that the code for Raleigh is RDU, right? So you'll see I've kind of broken it out into, right now, 2 logical containers, if you will. I have what's called the describe block, and I have what's called the if block. Inside the describe block is where you do a majority of your code. You can break out describe blocks and other describe blocks as well. And I'll show you examples of how to do that, but I'm going to keep it simple right now. So I'm describing the Raleigh airport code. So one of the things you need to do in your code is to actually run your function and get what actually is the output. So if you run this, the actual is going to be a custom object with the, it's actually a hash table of what I just showed you. So so that's going to be what I showed you earlier. So my if block is going to be Raleigh code is accurate. So I expect it to be RDU, right? So if I run actual.code, this should be expected because Raleigh's airport is named RDU. So I'm running the should operator called B. So it should be this. B is under this is just PowerShell code. It's equal. So it should equal this. Yeah, all the get should operators are just PowerShell. Equal, in, contains, match, blah blah blah. So this just gives a little bit more of an easier way to write code, right? So if I run this, oh yeah, I gotta go here and then run it. So Raleigh code is accurate. So why is it green? It's green because that's what it is. It's Raleigh's airport name is RDU. So I like the because parameter because if it fails, and I'll show you what it looks like in a second, I can see why it failed. So there you go. That's it. That's what, like 10 lines, maybe 8 lines. So I just tested code. I can now release this, and there you go. Any questions so far, by the way?
Why the expected variable instead of just doing should be and then putting your expectation?
Yeah. So you can do either one. I like storing the variable up top so I can change it here in the variable as opposed to changing it in the code itself or changing it in the test. But you can do either one.
So is B something that will actually come up if I did if something dash equals, would B actually show up there? Or is that just for this pester? Just for pester. Okay.
Yeah, just for pester. Yeah. Yep. All right. So if we go, this should be exactly. Let's run this. All right. So go this. So similar. Same one. Get airport, city Raleigh. Expansion should be RDU. It's always uppercase. So it should always be literally RDU. I don't see, there's never a lowercase airport code, right? And if I come over here, this will run too. So let's see what this looks like. Run. Okay. All right, got a failure. The first test, Raleigh code is always uppercase. By the way, you see there's my name right here. There's my name down here. So Raleigh code is always uppercase. It's green because it passed. It should be exactly, and it is exactly RDU. It matches RDU just like the object does. If I go down here, I'm doing the same thing, but instead of the expected value, I'm writing in lowercase RDU, and it fails. And what pester does, and this is amazing, it tells you what it expected, but what it was. This is awesome. This is a huge part of why you should use pester, because it is very straightforward and easy to get into. But this is an example of a failing test, right? And this is the be exactly operator, right? So then you got this. I'm not using the function here, but I'm using something different, and this should be describing not airport codes, but describing best airports in the USA. So that's a better description, right? So I put the best airport codes in an array, and RDU is one of the best airports. So let's run this. No, of course it's not. RDU is not the best, but it's getting there, right? So yeah, the contain is essentially saying, hey, does this array contain this value? So what probably a better thing to do if I'm consistent is expected equals RDU, and then I can just put, well, let's make it capitalized, and then I can put expected here. Let's run this again. Yeah, so if I'm being consistent, I'm assigning a variable to what it should be. There you go. So it's not in there. So, but I essentially said, hey, is this expected value in the array? It's not. Pretty awesome. So let's keep going. It should be of type. All right. So yeah, I like it here. So you run this. Well, let's look at this first. Describe name function output. So get airport should output a hash table, and because that's what I told it in the function to do. So the output, I'm assigning a variable called output. Get airport city Raleigh. So output should be of type a hash table. So let's run this. So
I don't get what the name does. What is that dash name?
Right here?
Is that just to describe, like, free text to say what you're doing, or how does that relate to the test? I must have missed that.
It's just a better way to kind of put into. It just describes the main thing of what you're testing, right? So if I was testing like.
So later when he's doing multiple tests against that function for different properties and different outputs and things, then that name, it's easy to determine what piece of thing you're testing without having to read the rest of the code.
It's
For the current
test.
test.
So there's different reasons to make describes, and I'll go into context blocks here too. But this is extremely straightforward and something I want to focus on for now. But I'll get to why. So as an example, actually let me jump ahead. New server builds, new 80 users in my org get run through pester tests. Right, multiple context blocks, multiple describe blocks that go through, like, is it in vCenter? I'll go through all of that. So that I have a lot to cover over. So I'll get there. So yeah, it tests the type of output and says if it's true or false. So that took what? How many lines code? That line? That's not hard at all. So hopefully you're seeing how simple it is. And this is why this is incredible in my opinion. All right, so Artie doesn't have any awards, not that I know of. They're not the best yet, but they'll get there. So I'm going to run this. Is this true? Yeah, it's true. So the awards property is blank in my hash table where I outputted it. So B null or empty is essentially how it is. So the awards property in my hash table is empty, so it should be that. So that should be not null or empty. If I can do this. So, by the way, you can put not. It's just the inverse. There you go. So right, pretty straightforward. So essentially, this is the should operator be null or empty. This is fun. I use this a lot. So should throw. There's should throw and there's should not throw. I actually had a should not throw example, but I was told that it's like, of course you don't want it to throw. Like every line of code should not throw. Like otherwise, why are you writing it, right? So the concept is like 99% of the time you don't need should not throw because every line of code should not throw. So I have an example of why you should throw it. Now I'm throwing it because if you look, I'm testing another airport. So I'm not going to get that. And now why I should throw? Well, because I haven't added that one. So if I run this, didn't throw.
No.
Oh, it did throw. That's right. Yeah, so it passed. Yep. That's right. That's good. Right? Did you catch that? So you got to let me do it again. So if this doesn't exist in my function, this should throw. Yeah. There you go.
So let me ask, with pesters, like a general rule of thumb, the people that have done it, I understand that you're writing specific tests for your code, but as you're writing code and you're developing tests, are you creating a catalog of standardized tests that you then run against all your code, or are you customizing it for each individual function of script that you're running for?
That's a group test. So how I've seen it done and what my goal is to end up doing is to essentially test common scenarios, like can my module be imported? Does it throw when I import it? Does my code fail any test? And then what I've seen Kevin Marquette and others do is they'll actually have a tests folder in their module, and they'll have individual tests. So one thing, you see how each file has a .tests in it? If you run invoke pester and it'll run, well, this is one way of showing the invoke pester part. But if you just run invoke pester right now, it's going to run every single file that contains the .tests name. So if I run this, it's going to be gross. So it's going to run all of this stuff. Oh, skipping ahead, showing the good stuff.
So the reason I brought that up is because if someone is sort of missing the big picture with pester, if you think about, there's a school of thought that says when you write your code, if you're writing a function or something like that, the first thing you should do is write the help file before you write any of the code, because you think about what you want it to do before you actually write the code. You start and you think just from a high-level concept level. I want it to do this. I think it's going to have these switches, and I want it to have a certain output, and these are sort of my examples. And by writing that help file, you sort of focus what you're writing with the code. So this is sort of the same idea. He's building tests for the individual code, but over time, many of his tests are going to be the same across all of the scripts that he writes. So what will end up happening is be able to run pester tests very quickly against a standard library of tests. And then if he knows that he has some crazy stuff in a particular script, maybe he writes some individualized tests here. But the idea being is when you write your code, you know what you want it to output. And you use the tool to test those scenarios to make sure that it's doing what you thought. Because the scenario, like if you say, I'm going to ask for input and I expect the input to be a number. Nobody expects anybody to hit the keyboard and hit Z. But what happens when that happens? Does that crash my code? So that's the idea behind these tests, which is build a set of tests that I can use repetitively to test all the standard stuff so that when I make code and I pass it off to someone, I know that it runs and there's no crap in there. Now, it might not test every nook and cranny of everything that he's written, but at some point, if you've done this over time, you'll have a battery of tests that you can run against all your things, and you could say, well, we just ran this. It's sort of like a litmus test. It passed all of our standardized tests. It's pretty good code, right?
Yeah. There's a school of thought that says write your tests first before you even start running any of your code. And that's wild to me. Like, that's totally opposite of how I've, like, even come to learn PowerShell. But there's different approaches to how you write tests as well. I write them as I'm writing the code. And if I think of, like, if I write a private function, okay, I'll write tests for that. I suck at it. I want to get better at it, but I'm not good at it yet.
I think I saw at PowerShell on the river last year, Stephen Fox did pester. And I think he said he starts with his pester tests and then he writes the code.
There's guys who do that. Yeah, they will literally just mock up kind of a framework what they're doing. Yeah. You need to do that if you're writing some huge module. I mean, if you're sharing it with other folks, and if it's outside of your profile, you probably want to write tests for it, right? Because someone's going to get mad at you.
Do you have the chat up? Kevin?
Yeah. So the question was around this because it didn't come down there because that only happens if it fails. So if I do not throw. So if it fails, if my test fails, it'll output the string that the because takes. There you go. Okay. Easy enough. All right. So here's another one. Here's the weekend. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So, or end of week for those who aren't in the U.S., because that's apparently end of week is a better way of saying that. So it's okay to fly today because it's not the weekend. So let's test it. Now, I'm doing something. I'm doing a little bit something different. I'm running get date. I don't know the output of get date, but I do know, I can kind of test for it, right? So, so get date, day of week, should not be in weekend because flying on the weekend is a bad idea. So if I run get date right now, you're going to see what it is. It's Wednesday. So if I run this, yeah, you can fly today because it's not the weekend, right? Now if I run this on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, this would fail, right? So this is the BN operator. Then this is just the inverse. So it should not be in weekend. So whatever's on this side, typed over here, should not be in weekend. And again, the because isn't there because it passes.
Jonathan?
Yeah.
What's the best way to read an it? I can certainly see describe as, I'm describing a test, but how that verb or pronoun it.
Sure.
And it's not an if, it's an it.
Yeah. So let's take, for example, you're testing a user, an AD user, and you want to test 5 AD values. You want to test their email, their SAM account name, their UPN, blah blah blah. So you would, in my opinion, this is what I would do. I would say describe, name, AD user value test. So AD user value test, right? So I'd create 5 if blocks. So if name, SAM account name is good. Make another one. If name, mail is good. That kind of thing. So the if blocks are really designed to test one result, if you will. They're not really designed to test for like more than one. That's kind of how I've seen it written a lot.
Okay, I was just trying to wrap my head around how to read it, and my brain's going, yeah, it's not an if, it's an it.
Well, the if block is just a section of code, a script block that you're just running a test against, or you're running an assertion against. You're assuming that the day of week is not in the weekend, right? So your if blocks will contain your assertions, right? So you'll say, hey, the weekend, but you actually run the test and the assertions in the if block. So don't think of if. Like that's not the case. No. It's totally different.
Well, does
IT
stand for?
Yeah, no, it's a little odd to understand, but the more I start running these and you start working with these, you'll start to understand why.
Like it stands for immediate test.
Well, it is a function. If you look at the module, it is the function itself. So it should, so it's describe. These are all. This pester itself is a domain specific language, which is essentially the naming doesn't really follow the get verb or the verb naming. It follows another type of language naming structure, right? So it's odd to see this in this way. I agree with you.
If you look at the screen, it's clear to me that the language is written to be understood from the output point of view. It may be a little weird when you're writing it, but when you read the output, in other words, if you have this pre-canned test and you just run it, the output says, hey, I'm doing my end of week flying check. It's okay, right? It's in English. It's just a very native, casual language,
right.
Casual English language test. So the language is written based on the results. The code is how you get it to work, but the code doesn't make sense, like you said, in the sense of it. You have to kind of grab these concepts and just roll with it.
Right.
It's designed for the output.
It's the first time I'm seeing this particular domain-specific language, the DSL. So I'm trying to go. Why would you name this an it?
Yeah. Well, so history about pester. It was started in 2011 by I think one guy. I don't forget his name. And then around 2015 or 2016 is when they started getting more maintainers on it. And then from there, it's just taken off. So it's been around since 2011. So I don't know why
the chat,
they called it.
It means invoke test.
What's that?
Invoke test.
Oh, is that right?
So it does mean.
According to the chat, I'm I'm assuming TJ's got the thing in the chat.
I said immediate test or invoke test. Okay.
Yeah. I used to work at the Apple Store, and when someone would come in
Mike.
and they'd ask a question about something when I was worked at the Apple Store, they encourage you to say, I don't know, let's find out. So I don't know, but we just found out.
Thanks to whoever knew that.
Yeah, right.
So just as a side note, when you come to these meetings, I actually would recommend that you guys join the WebEx, because there's a pretty good conversation that goes on. And in this particular context, we're talking here, but today we happen to have some very smart people who can answer these questions in the chat, which unfortunately you guys don't get to see right now. So, it would be cool if there's no cost or anything. You just come, you join the thing, and you could just tag along.
Yeah, there's 2 guys in the chat right now who've helped me with this as well.
Yeah.
So this is a community effort. So next thing, is there questions?
No, I just wanted to say, because Mark made a good point here. He just says, the idea is for each test to read in an English-like way, which I was starting to say. He says, it does something that I expect. Something is what I expect. So something and what I expect it to be.
Right, the assert.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was gone over. So there's 2 types of testing in a way with Pester. There's testing with your code. There's unit testing, and then there's integration testing, where you have to release it and then check to see if stuff actually works. And this is a form of operational validation. So remember the get airport outputs a hash table, which includes the website. And I can't control the output of invoke web requests for the website. I just want it to be online. So I'm going to run a Pester test that's operationally, like an operational validation test to see if they're online. And I'm actually throwing something in here as well I'm going to teach you about as well. And I don't use this a lot, but I want to do more. Before all, after all. So, and then I have a context here, all right? So describe is get airport tests, and context name is website status. Let's run this guy, and if you see before all, after all, watch what happens. So describing the name, so context website status, and what runs before this. This is I run before any of the if blocks. Before all. So this before all, despite it being below my 2 if blocks, ran before my if blocks ran. I'll do it again. Despite the fact that my before all is on line 23, it ran before 11 and 17. Right. The reason to use before all and after all is if you need to clear a variable, if you need to reset something before you're testing or reset something after you're testing, the before all and after all script blocks is a great place to do that. But I wanted to show this because I wanted to show you that despite the fact that their if blocks are above the before all and after all, it runs in that way. So they're online. Good. So actual is I ran an invoke web request against my code and got the website, and I wanted 200. And I expected it to be 200. I expected it to be online. So is it? Yes. Is it? Yeah. There you go.
So I think that test is a little bit more indicative of how you might use this. Because imagine if you had this as a pre-canned test. I know I have a script that does a web call. I just have a pre-canned test. I can get to the web. I can do this, right? So then you start to see how you can build a catalog of tests that you can just throw your script at and say, it passed all my basic tests as sort of like a quality.
Absolutely, man. It can get to a DC. It can ping the gateway. I mean, there's 1,000 things, but this starts getting into other things as well. Like this is one of my favorite tests because I'm an ops guy. I have a hard time testing code, right? I want to get better at it. That's half the reason I'm presenting. But this is one of my favorites. Like I love doing stuff like this because this tests stuff externally that I can't control. Like I can't control that the website's online or not. I can test for it, and I can fail on it, but I want to test for a web request, right?
So you could use a test to sort of sudo check up-down status of websites.
Yeah.
Right? So how would you call that? Sort of scheduled task, scheduled job kind of deal?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all PowerShell. I mean, remember, how do you run a PowerShell job on a schedule? We learned about it with Jeff Hicks.
Yeah.
Scheduled jobs. I mean, this literally, remember, all PowerShell. I'm doing nothing more than just showing you a PowerShell module with PowerShell code, which is awesome. By the way, where did I put it? This is an example from the PowerShell GitHub, the Microsoft open source PowerShell version. Right. This is an example of a test. So if I go all the way over here, they actually run this in their test. So if you actually go to the PowerShell GitHub, you'll see Microsoft themselves writing tests for PowerShell code in PowerShell. So there you go. So you should use Pester because Microsoft's using it internally for their own code that they're shipping out. Make sense? Any questions so far? It's operational validation, one of my favorites. So before all, I showed you that. This was from the example. So by the way, I'm going to show you the website here in a second. So because there's another way to show how stuff runs. But I'm going to come back to that because that's not fun. And that's hard to follow. All right. So we have, with invoke web requests, let's come back here. I didn't know what I was going to get back from status code, right? I expected it to be a 200, but I didn't know, right? So there's a way, and I probably should have done this, but anyway, there's a way that I can mock a invoke web request to always return a 200, a 401, a 500, other codes, and test against that as well. So and that is another powerful piece of Pester. So you can mock certain or any functions you want. So let me show you what that looks like. I'm on a Mac, and by the way, thanks Mark Rack for this. He was helpful with this, and still, I'm still wrapping my head around mocking. It is extremely powerful, and can get you very far in how you write code. So I want to do get airport tests. I'm running, let's say I'm running get 80 user, and I want to run it for the CEO of RDU, and I want to get this company value. I'm thinking that this is like, this is what you get when you run get 80 user, right? I'm just returning a custom object. So let's start here. Let's start up here. So describe get airport tests. Context, name should confirm get 80 user can be used to match users for the airport. So function, so I create an empty function called get 80 user, right? I'm on a Mac. I don't have get 80 user, so I can't mock it. So then I write mock command name, get 80 user, and I mock with this. The mock with script block is my output. So I'm outputting, get 80 user will output a PS custom object with two properties, display name and company name, with these two, right? So if I run RDU company test, if I run this get 80 user right now, it's going to run the mocked command with these results. So this user right here so basically if you look here, get 80 user dot company, so get 80 user dot company, it's going to be what? It's going to be this right here, right? So watch. I think I'm doing the same thing down here. Yes, I'm doing the same thing. I'm going to run these first. Okay. So I just ran a get 80 user tests on a Mac against a function that I wrote. So using mocking. Because I use mocking because I want to control the output of get 80 user because I want to control and test for this result, right? So again, empty function, mock this empty function and return it with these objects and then test it. So I got name test user. So I'm running this right here. Get airport city rally.name. So this right here, what's this? This is This is going to be RDU International Airport, or Raleigh International Airport. And then what is this? This is the user I just described, just defined up here, and this is the .company, right? So user.company, what's that? It is, oh, because I need to run it. That's fine. I'm not going to waste time on that. But you see kind of what I'm getting at with mocking. You can control the output that you get from a function that is literally can be installed on your machine. Like I can mock any function I want to and return whatever I want to in order to test certain outputs that I wouldn't be able to test.
Looks like it was limited to your scope that you had up above, though. So when you tried to run it below on line 23, it really ran it, as opposed to running your mock function.
So that's why I'm putting my function inside my context block. So every time, now this is where I'm not quite certain, but there's reasons to put your functions and your mocks within a context block and with an if block, so it doesn't carry over. So if you see down here, I'm running it again, and I'm doing this time, I'm returning a different value, and I'm running it against Phoenix, right? So this is going to be the same. This is going to work fine right here. I just ran this, right? So it's going to be fine. Now,
so I assume the context is a different scope. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
scope
that kind of makes sense if you think it through, right? So I think the idea here, you've just eliminated your dependencies. If you're a developer that's writing something that relies on AD or SQL or Azure or some other thing.
for somebody else's module that isn't finished yet.
Right. And you don't have it. It doesn't mean you can't continue to develop code. You can put basically dummy values in there by mocking what should be there so that you can continue to test and write. Yeah. And then I guess the context so you can spin up functions that you need just for that test.
Like if I run get culture right now, I'm going to get English. Like I can't run get culture and get like Spanish, like cause that's not how it works, right? But I can mock get culture to return what would happen if a user ran my function that has a get culture value of Spanish or anything else. So if I run this right here, actually, look, so VS Code is awesome where it has the ability for you to run pester tests from within the editor, which is awesome. So this should work. It does. So I've mocked a function that's installed on my system, and I've mocked it to return a different value. And then I've tested that value exists. So don't, like, if mocking is complex, like, I'm right there with you. But this is 201 level stuff. But I want you to see how you can get to a point where you mock everything in your tests and functions and get to a pretty good point where you're testing everything you can before you release it to your end users, your customers, or whatever. The other side of that is you might mock away everything so that you know nothing about what happens, because you can't. I mean, it's hard to mock a lot of things, but this tester allows you to do that concept and get to a point where you can actually run that test, that type of test in your function, in your scripts, in your testing, which is super powerful.
It's funny. I look at this and I feel like that example when you write something and you go over your coworker and you're like, hey, check out what I just did. And they're like, that's really cool. And they're like, wouldn't that be cool if we ran that against something else? And you're like, how would I do that? That's what mocking is, right? It eliminates that whole, like, how do I set it up for that other environment?
Yeah, it could be used
right?
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's not the only use case, but God, I want to do this code, but how do I connect to SQL? I have no idea.
Can you scroll just a bit to...
Sure.
So, you've got a function up here for the get AD user, but then you've got a mock below for your last test.
Yeah.
Could you have used mock for AD user, or did you need to specifically say that was a function?
I think he needs to be a function because he's calling it down below in the line 39.
Yeah, so calling it in a different context block.
Yeah, but then down at the bottom, your date test, get culture.
Yeah. Make sense? All right, let's jump ahead. We'll come back to that if we need to. Mocking can be a whole other presentation. So here's another one. I can say, hey, does it have the parameter city, and is it a string type? It is, yeah. So if I go back to my get airport, I have a parameter called city, and it's a string. And I want to test for that. Right, so where did I go? No. So there you go. Should exist. That will fail because I moved it down here. So let's do, there we go. Exist is test path. So does this file exist? If it does, then yeah, it's going to pass. Now, if I didn't do that, if I just did this back here, it's going to fail hard. Copy null value. Yeah, see, test path. Do that. So should exist is another way of testing if a file exists on disk. So that's the should operator exists, right? So, here's another one, another mocks. This is from Jakob. He's one of the main maintainers of Pester as well. This is literally ripped right out of this article. So if I run this, I'm mocking get service, and then I want to make sure my output for get service is stopped all the time. So if I do service equals get service name antivirus service, and running should be running. Status of my service, I know it is stopped. It should be running because antivirus must be running to protect our computer. So if I run this, it's going to fail. So I just tested what would happen if some service called antivirus service or something else was not running. So pretty wild. All right, regex. Does the phone number match the regex? So match. Let's run it. See what happens. Yeah, it's the correct one. So there you go. So match operator. So let's move on because I don't know much about regex. So this is. I'll come back to that too. That's wild. That's a little bit about Pester. There's a handful of other. Modules that its primary use is to use Pester and do stuff with it. So, there's things. Well, I can't start this because I'm sharing just VS Code. So that's not going to be fun. Hang on a second. Sorry. Go back to code. Okay. Can you see it? Did I just break it? Yeah. Yeah, broke. Hang on. Hang on. Sorry. All right. And we're back. Okay. These will all be posted online. So these are good repositories to look through how people are doing Pester testing. This looks familiar right here. We're going to learn about this the next time around. I'll jump back over to this in a second, but I wanted to show, there's one guy on Reddit who wanted to see a cert equivalent. He asked about it, so I'm going to show it. So there's Pester, and then there's a module called a cert. So a cert allows you to, similar to Pester, allows you to assert things, and it's a lot simpler to use. So that's probably a horrible way of explaining it, but let me show you what it does. Two custom objects. Kevin next to me, 32, 31. We both know PowerShell. We both speak English, but I only have 2 years of experience. He has 8, right? So if I want to compare these two and see if they're equal compared to PS custom objects, I'd have to do like this many lines of code for pester. So that's what, 22, 32, 14 lines of code. That's doable, but it's not easy. It's kind of complicated. It can be complicated. So Jakob, he released a module called assert module, and one of the functions is assert equivalent. So the actual is me, and then spec is Kevin. So let's run this. So what it just did in one line, I just compared in one line two PS custom objects, every property in them, and then I was able to compare the output what's different. So the age is different, and the PowerShell experience in years is different. So one line of code to compare a PS custom object and its properties. So I come here, do the same thing. And then I run Mike's 49 is English. Mike doesn't have any hobbies, so
You didn't ask. You didn't ask the
Yeah,
hobbies.
no, that's for hobbies. But what it does here is, oh, you're missing the property hobbies in your custom object, right? Which is pretty awesome. So this is hard to do, to compare these two without writing like lines and lines and lines and lines of code, even in pester. So that's one of the benefits of this. I have not used this yet in production in my code. I'm just now learning about it, but I wanted to show it off because it's pretty awesome. And it's maintained by the primary maintainer of pester. So last one. All right, I'll exclude hobbies. That's fine.
My hobbies are long walks on the beach and romance novels.
Yeah, okay. I'll exclude hobbies because I don't know Mike's hobbies. But he likes long walks on the beach. So two custom objects, and I actually have the ability to set the options to exclude the property hobbies. So what's going to happen is I'm actually going to exclude hobbies and just compare age and languages. So what's going to happen? So our age is different. Mike's older, and I excluded the hobbies because I don't know Mike's hobbies.
So is it by design, or did you do something that I missed, that the output is totally formatted different than pester, where you had the green and red result tests, where now you're getting this sort of black and red console code?
So it's the same. I'm just showing off different failing results. So let me show the same. That's actually a great thing I missed. So let's just say name is blah. Name blah. Same thing. And if I go here, let's just do it right. Actual is actual. Expected is expected.
I think you have a breakpoint.
No. Oh, work. Oh, okay. I don't know why that doesn't work. Yeah, it should say yeah. It returns fine. Cool. We'll come back to that. One other thing. So I've been showing you how to like actually run pester within an editor, but the biggest thing with pester is you can invoke it in your code against tests, and you target a script right here. You cannot do this. Right. I don't think you can do that. Instead, you have tests that you have to pass it to. And I showed you the test right here. So if I run this line, really? What happens? Not fine. Oh, so I renamed it. There you go. That'll help. Be exactly 4. That's better. All right, so let's try it again. Nope, I don't want to do that. Sorry. And let's run the first one. So you see pass-through. Pass-through will save the output of the test to A. So if I do A, A is a custom object with a bunch of properties. Failed count, pass count, pending, da 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 da. So if I just do A again, so I can see A dot total count is 1, pass count, failed, da da da. You can query if something failed. So if A dot failed count is not 0, stop. Don't deploy it to the help desk. Something's failing, right? Think about this, right? So if you run module-pester against your test, pass it through, and this variable is some variable output. Fail count is not 0. Don't deploy it. Stop it, right? So does that make sense? This is actually what I do when I so at work we have a process, kind of a CI/CD pipeline, sort of, with Jenkins and PowerShell. And what I've done is I've used Pester to test my code. And if anything fails at all with my code, or it fails a PS script analyzer rule, then it stops the deployment altogether and screams at me to say, hey, you messed up. And what it said, it's just outputting this variable with certain properties right here. And actually, it can give you, the failure result as well. Yeah, so 1 failed. This will just show the summary right here. But if I do B now, B dot test result, we'll show you what exactly failed. So then you get a variable output of what failed where, right? Line 15. Line 15 in that test failed. What was the name of it? Oh, it was that, right? So name, pass, describe. So here's the describe block, right? Talked about it, the time, the error record. So you can see where it failed, right?
So I understand that you designed a bunch of tests for the presentation tonight, but at work, when you say you run it through your sort of pseudo CI/CD, do you have a standard battery of tests that you're throwing at all your scripts?
Yes, absolutely. I stole it from Kevin Marquette. He has a standard module testing that he essentially loops through his public and private functions. I don't know if it's standard or it's a lot of what other community members are doing, but what he does is he has a test that essentially gets child atom on every public and private function and just runs the test against them to make sure they don't fail. There's a way to do that, and I can show you after here, but that's a huge part of just testing your code. Because like if you can test your code and VS Code will scream at you like, hey, you have a problem, right? Problems. So actually, so if I deployed this code right now, it's going to scream at me and say, hey, you haven't defined in 21, you haven't defined A, and this is, sorry, I'm going off topic, but I haven't defined A and B anywhere. So if I deployed this, what's that?
You defined them, but you're not.
I'm sorry. I defined that I did not use them. So if I deployed this, it's going to say, hey, you assigned them, but you never used them. So I would fail this build because I didn't use a variable, like clean up my code, right? So that's how I use Pester in the process of deploying my module to a file share. It's CI/CD, but it's not complex. So what time is it? 8:03.
Take your time, man.
One more thing. Yeah, no, there's a ton of stuff to go through. This is right from their wiki. So it's just PowerShell, right? Describe, set it result examples. So it should ensure the API is working. So if it's Monday, so set it result inconclusive. If the API is down for maintenance on Mondays, right? This should be Sunday, and we should write this API is not working for Chick-fil-A or something like that, right? Should test true as false on the opposite day. Let's run this. Stop talking. All right. So should ensure the API is working. Look at that if block right here. If get day of the week equals Monday, set it result inconclusive because API is down. API result working got null, right? And then I want to show you this. Where is opposite day defined? Am I not doing that? You know what? Yeah, but where is Ops of the day up here. Yeah, this isn't. That's okay. Essentially, what you can do, I don't do this a lot, and I may have worked this up, and you can look at the wiki for this. Has different outputs, right? So you can set things so it's not ready yet. So if you want to write a test, you know it's not ready, like you're missing something, or you come back to it, you can set it result as pending, not ready, or skipped as well. So finally, last one. I can test multiple inputs, or rather test cases against functions as well. So I'll run this here. Let's see here. Test cases, fixture cases. So my cases are test cases of it's just two arrays or two hash tables. City, Raleigh, Kane, Durham. So if city exists, then get airport, test cases, cases. So city, name. So I'm passing Raleigh here, and the name should be here. So I'm passing Raleigh city to my function, and I should return Raleigh Durham International Airport. So I just tested my two successful results, right? So if I add here a third one, so if I do here blah 2. So try to the city, I can't find that one. Right. So this allows me to run or test multiple inputs into a function. So yeah, that's the majority of it. Any questions about pester?
I have one for you.
Yeah.
You talked about how it actually influences how you write your code.
Yeah.
How do you? So help elaborate on that. How do you make your code more test friendly?
Let me jump back. Sorry, to my keynote and finish my keynote. Apologize about that. All right, here we go. Let's go back here. Let's play this. Yeah. All right. Use case. I had like a whole other half. Hopefully I can answer in this next 5 minutes.
Cool.
I'll come back to that. So at work, 2 things we do so far to use Pester. So we onboard new users. When I release the module that I created to my help desk, I want them to run it and test that things exist. So I give them the function. So invoke dash, new company user, right? And then I have a second function that's test dash company user. And I input, the inputs are like, first name, last name, or employee ID. And so I come back with, does the account exist, UPN match, company, blah, 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 blah. So I can use Pester to test all this stuff. So this is actually the output of it running at work. So test dash company user, select the right person, and then I validate and run it. So I have describing user validation. Mark, you asked about different namings, right? This is how I name my test here. So if you see here, I'm testing the UPN, I'm testing the user profile, I'm testing email matches, I'm testing company information set, group membership, 365, all kind of nonsense. So if you guys ever wrote code to deploy the user, there you go. There's a good example of it. So my help desk runs this, like, hey, this failed. The profile is accurate. It's not accurate, right? Well, it's accurate. It's run your profile. Like you can put the same account name or the username %. So I have a bad test. It's a false positive. I need to fix that. So this is what I love about it. I obviously tested my code, but being able to create a function that I can hand over to my user and say, test this, right? Awesome. Huge, right? So same thing with new servers. So I just built our new server module, and once the team is done building it, I have them test to see if the description is set, if it exists in the DNS, correct OU, blah, 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 right?
So quick question. So this is you testing the module that you did, or this is you testing after the fact to see that it did what it was supposed to do?
Correct, yes. This is testing the fact. This is testing that the module did what it was supposed to do. Good question. Yeah. So this is not testing the function invoke new server. This is testing after they ran it that it did it. Right. Okay. It's just it goes out, get 80 user, get 80 computer, all that stuff. Yeah. Sorry, I switched.
So that comes in kind of somewhat of a validation of work done.
Correct. Yeah. Which is huge. Like this is huge for my team because they like green.
Never seen a testing framework used to validate work.
Yeah. Operational validation. That's essentially the concept, right?
Kind of desired state.
Yeah. In a way. Yeah,
in a way.
Exactly. So other uses, PS cones, cones, DBA checks, DBAs, LARs, any other DBAs. This module, you can run it and run it against your SQL server and tell you what's wrong with it. Tell you how to fix it, tell you how to, it's amazing. I'm not a DBA, but I take a lot of like my coding and like how I approach testing from this module. This is wild. OVF, Operational Validation Framework. This was a module by one of our presenters as well. An investor. This is archived, no longer really active, but this tests that your vCenter is set up right and you have everything configured right. And if it's not set up right, it'll fix it for you. So using Pester. More uses, and obviously this post and these links will be online. Validating AD attributes exist. DNS, Skype, domain controllers, Citrix XenApp. Another one, software deployment readiness. I mean, they're literally, you can find a use for using Pester if you're a developer or not. So, yeah, there's a few links right there of what I use so far, and some people that I used. There we go.
So let's take this.
Sorry, Ryan, what was your question? Did I answer it or no?
No. I don't think so. Yeah, it was. How does it influence the way that you write your code to be more testable?
It helps me.
Like how you wrote it? I used to write. I might have wrote a function like this, but it did the job, but it wasn't very testable. So now I write it like this.
My thing personally was I write a function to do one thing and one thing well. I would write functions to do like 4 or 5 things, and it would work, but I can't test that. I mean, I'd have to write like 10 different files to test it. So it forced me to write functions, especially private functions in my modules, to do one thing, output one thing, true, false, or output one object, right?
Okay.
So that's how.
That's what makes it testable.
Yeah. Exactly.
I see.
Yeah. If you simplify your code, which this forces you to, then you can start developing better code.
Okay.
That's testable.
Okay. But
does that make sense? Does that help?
I don't know if that's 100% a true statement, because the answer is not to simplify your code. The answer is to focus your code. Code doesn't have to be simple, right? It could be doing very complex things.
Yes.
But it has to behave the way you intended it to, right? So by writing the help file first, by creating the tests, you are validating that what you wrote is actually doing what you thought it was going to do, right? So when it works, that's great. But when things don't go that you didn't account for, those are the times you're like, man, I didn't think someone was going to put a period in that field, right? Yeah, so it gets you to think about what is happening with my code, right? You're trying to answer the questions that might be encountered as I run this thing.
It's hard. This is not an easy thing for like people to pick up on, even for me. I have a hard time writing tests, especially for my code. I have a blast writing it for operational validation, like writing like the test that I wrote for new AD user and verifying that was a lot of fun. But forcing me to learn how to write focused, simple code, testable code is how you'll really benefit from Pester. And you can use Pester anywhere. I mean, that gets because of PowerShell you can do pretty much anything, and you can test pretty much anything. Right?
And I've seen a lot of people bending Pester into alternate use cases, because we're talking about testing code here, but really, you can check for any value.
That's right.
And it should be this. Yeah. Well, there's no reason his tests couldn't be done against existing AD users. Yeah. Does he have a failed password? Is he locked out? Is he X? Is he Y? Right? They're all just tests.
Yeah. think of this, like get a vet log, get a vet log, and the query on error should not be more than 0, right? I mean, think about like what it should be, like what should your state of code or end result, what should it be, right? And test for it. If it's not that, then fix it.
So let's. I don't want to steal the thunder if anybody has questions.
Any other questions online or?
But just now take this concept in your head and skip ahead 2 weeks, and we're going to have Joel Sallow talking about the same concept.
He's much smarter than me.
To teach you how to learn syntax of code. This is the wrong answer. How would I make it right? What is the code supposed to look like to get the desired result?
Yeah. No, Joel's PS codes, I've used a little bit, and it'll teach you and show you how to return the correct result on a pester test. It's very cool. You guys check it out, especially for 2 weeks. So.
Is there interest, show of hands, is there interest in just learning about testing in general, the subject of testing?
Sure, but that's.
Yes.
I think so, but
a lot of folks that come here, and maybe not. I mean, majority are ops focused, and some are developer focused, and some are mixed, right? And we're all developers in a sense.
Right.
This concept is a very new thing, and I think as we get more and more.
No, the reason I was asking is that a colleague is an expert in the field of testing.
Yeah.
He's local.
Okay.
So that's a potential.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That's good.
If there's interest.
Cool. Well, this stuff will be on GitHub and on YouTube here shortly. So, thanks guys for joining, and if y'all have questions, come back.